What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have to counter a video I just saw concerning Joe Rogan. He had guest Will Harris on his show, and they were talking about the incidents leading up to the defeat of Anthony Joshua. And they also mentioned some Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder things that were pretty informative, but I want to break it down to you guys on what was said. You know, these guys were talking about the rumors that Joshua had got iced in sparring and he had a panic attack. Of course, we heard that one, which all these were denied, mind you. And Will Harris was basically, explaining that's what his dad was pissed off about. Like, hey, I told my son wasn't ready, yada, yada, yada. That's why he's supposed to went off on Eddie Hearn. Of course, Eddie Hearn denied it and made up a reason about the kitchen and the apartment they were staying of, the chef or whatever the case was. And something mediocre. And it's kind of hard to believe that that's what he was pissed off about. But, it is what it is. That was the reason, or the excuse, rather. And back to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan said that, he couldn't hit, or he couldn't stand up to Deontay Wilder's punching power. He just hit so fucking hard. He's tall. He's, and Will Harris was like, yeah, he has that old slave strength. A lot of people say that, but he is very strong. And the counterpunch Joe Rogan, first off, Deontay Wilder will knock out anybody that he hits with that hand. He's like Ernie Shavers. He's like David Tua's left hook. If he hits you with that punch, you're gone. It's heavyweight division. These are heavyweights. You don't play about that power. The only significant thing about Deontay Wilder, which is a good and bad thing, is he's not orthodox. He's not traditional. He'll throw him at a fucking angle that, he'll catch you with this punch, and it's like, he'll wind up, windmill and all that, these different terms that is used by Deontay when he hits you. He hits anybody, they're going out. And so I don't see what's the significance of, if he fights Deontay Wilder and Deontay couldn't stand up to Deontay's punches. No, he don't. He won't. He can't. I agree. But then again, you're not supposed to. This is boxing. Hit without being hit. And another thing, why isn't, I know everyone talks about the Anthony Joshua situation. You hear videos, you hear them from channels that hated Joshua, you hear them from channels that praise Joshua. You hear Joshua everywhere, including Joe Rogan. So the question is, the $1 billion question, when Joshua was over here spending a lot of time on PR stuff, why wasn't he on Joe Rogan? Why didn't Joe Rogan reach out to Anthony Joshua, especially after getting everyone's account in perspective? He got Tyson Fury's perspective. He got Deontay Wilder's perspective. He got other fighter Brandon Schwab, his homeboy's perspective about who was doing what and why, who was ducking who and why and when and where and how, right? But he never reached out to Anthony Joshua himself, being that big of a star, being that big of a podcast. Joe Rogan has, millions of subscribers. Millions of people watch his podcast daily, easily. You know what I mean? So I don't know why he did not reach out to him. And to be someone like Joe Rogan, I don't know if he done, but I just found it, I don't believe that Anthony Joshua would turn down the opportunity to be on that show, to explain himself, just like he did The Breakfast Club, because a lot of those guys were pro Wilder guys. Like Charlamagne the God, that's a Wilder guy. And he told him, hey, I'm a Wilder fan. I think he's going to knock you out. But he was still on the show. He still gave his piece. Sway's Universe, right? Same thing. He was on that show, right? So it makes Joe Rogan's podcast on that perspective, because he knows a lot about boxing. I love his podcast. But when he's referring to Anthony Joshua, it makes it look one-sided. When you have a lot to say, or your guests have a lot to say about a particular fighter, that you had or you could have took or taken the opportunity to bring on your podcast to show like, okay, this is what everything I was talking about, you know. And I know Rogan's a Wilder guy because he's met Rogan, you know, he believes in the power. Rogan's an MMA guy too. So if you know anything about MMA fans, they expect knockouts and they love knockouts. I have friends that only look at MMA. Boxing bores them to death because they don't understand or don't really appreciate the sweet science of boxing. You know, they'll yawn, go to sleep. You know what I mean? But I think that Joe Rogan should have reached out to Anthony Joshua while he was here. You know what I mean? I think he still should. I think he should ask him, you know, instead of, you know, because he's the information provider. He gets a lot of information from a lot of his guests, and, you know, you talk back and forth. It's a good podcast. You know, you can get it all out and, you know, express and explain whatever you want to say on that particular podcast, whoever's on it. I mean, they take time to really just sit down and spill it, you know? And I think that he could have and should have done that with Anthony Joshua to see what kind of character he is face to face, you know? But he did mention Deontay Wilder with Fury and the knockdown, and then, you know, if you took a stopwatch and you counted 10 seconds off. But of course, it's not about 10 seconds, it's about the 10 count, okay? It has nothing to do with seconds. Don't give a shit about that. Just like Buster Douglas. Buster Douglas was down there 10 seconds when Tyson dropped him, and Tyson not technically knocked him out. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it was some other shit in that. I think he started counting late. I don't think Jack Reese counted late with Deontay Wilder. I don't. I mean, with Fury, when Fury was on the ground. I don't think that it was a late count. I think he was counting, you know what I mean? Because and I at the same time, Jack Reese was observing Tyson Fury. You see what I'm saying? So it's like he gave him the benefit of the doubt, and it's not like I haven't seen him do that before. I've seen Jack Reese referee numerous of fighters, and he's given them that opportunity. It's been guys that get up on 10, and he's about to say 10, and he's like, you almost missed it. You just made it. That's Jack Reese. So for Tyson Fury, everything aligned, and it went the way it went in his favor, except the decision, half-ass. So I just wanted to cover that because that was what was included in this podcast. So it's an interesting podcast. I'll leave you guys the link, you know, especially the clip about Joshua, because it tells enough about that on, you know, he didn't look like he's supposed to look, you know, and to counterpunch the whole thing, guys, it's easier to deny everything. It's just easier. It's easier to say, you know what, nothing happened. No excuses. It's the thing to do if you have integrity. And that's what Team Joshua has, because see, if they started explaining things, the more you explain, the more you're going to have to explain more, right? So yeah, he was knocked out in sparring 8 days ago. Why was he fighting, or why was he sparring 8 days ago? You know what I'm saying? Like, that would be another question you ask. Well, who authorized him sparring 8 days ago? Well, wait, he was looking at clips of Ruiz, 3 a.m. Why wasn't he fucking asleep? Sure, the time difference, I get it, but why is he doing that the night before? You know what I mean? So it would be so many different things. Who knocked him out? Who was the person responsible for doing that? Why was he? And then another question would be, well, if he had a concussion, why wasn't it documented? You couldn't. It was just too much. See, a lot of times it's too much complications. The complications are too much to bear when you have something like a fight to that magnitude. You know what I'm saying? That's just like if Manny Pacquiao really hurt his shoulder that night in the Mayweather fight. You remember my shoulder? I couldn't swing. And let's say he got in there and he hardly ever threw a right hook. He didn't really let his hands go, right? And then he came out and said, you know what? No, that's not excuses, but we can clearly see, like, dude, what the fuck's wrong with your arm? You know, we hear you in the corner asking Freddie, like, to rub your arm. So you're saying there's nothing wrong with your arm, right? You're saying one thing, but your body language and your actions are saying another thing, right? Although Manny was saying it was something wrong with my shoulder and he was throwing that motherfucker all night, you know, so it's kind of hard to buy that. But let's just say it was the way I said it, you know. Oh, no excuses, he won, he's a good fighter, and congratulations to Floyd Mayweather, and I want to fight him again. That shit, right? And then people, what's wrong with your shoulder? My shoulder's fine, I just had a little tension, that type of shit. People would be like, no, that don't sound right. Knowing a guy that throws that many punches per round, you know, all he threw is a left hand and his right, he didn't throw his right at all, right? On top of Freddie Roach rubbing it, putting ice on it. What the hell? People would think something very strange regardless of what he said or regardless of what he denied. And that's the case here in the Joshua situation. But anyway, you guys let me know what you think about Joe Rogan's podcast. I'll leave the link below again. Of course, please subscribe. You guys been Counterpunching. Peace.